Attack of the Pentaxians. So I released my review of the Pentax K1 a few days ago, and I got a lot of commentary about it. I thought I'd go through some of that, make a couple of corrections, and while we're at it, we'll actually talk about kind of the business of reviewing and how to handle responses and stuff. So we got a lot of comments on this video. Here's the first one I'm going to read. Wow. Either biased or ignorant. Pentax has third-party lenses too. Samyang Rokinon 14mm? You think that's a Canon exclusive? Seriously, Tony? First, you're right. I definitely made a mistake about this. There was a portion in my review where I was kind of demonstrating that Canon and Nikon have a wider variety of full-frame lenses than the Pentax platform does. And I listed all the Canon lenses I could find under 20 millimeters or under 24 millimeters. And I listed specifically the Rokinon 14mm and 8mm for Canon. I did not list it for Pentax. It was an error. So the very first person who commented on that, what I did was I responded and I said, my mistake, I made a mistake. I then went back and I annotated the video in YouTube, which puts up text over the video. And I commented, Pentax has these lenses too, my mistake. I also updated the description of the video to show that mistake. And this is how we handle mistakes. Now, there are people out there who don't seem to get this really basic concept, but we are human beings. Human beings make mistakes. And the way we handle it is in a journalistic way. Journalists make mistakes. Wall Street Journal makes mistakes. New York Times makes mistakes. Whoever your most respected publisher is, they make mistakes and they do their best to correct it. So we corrected it as best as we could. And I also personally replied back to the people who commented on it. And so what I would suggest is if you do watch our videos, then go ahead and turn on the annotations. Other people will use annotations in annoying ways. We do not use them to spam you or anything. We used annotations to correct things. Also, read the description of the video so that you can see any corrections that we've made. Now, in this case, the error was, obviously it was accidental. It was not like me trying to attack Pentax or make them look stupid. I was illustrating the differences in the number of lenses available for just one random segment that I picked, which is ultra-wide lenses. There were, I listed 13 Canon lenses and 1 Pentax lens. The ratio should have been 13 Canon lenses to 3 Pentax lenses. And so the main thesis still stands. Clearly, Canon has a lot more options than Pentax does. And for that reason, I don't feel like it changed the conclusion of our video. I also want to point out kind of the reality of life, making free content on YouTube. I wrote back to this person, I added an annotation to the video and description to mention Samyang Rokinon Prime availability. Please be more polite in the future because we can still be polite to each other. Even if you find that somebody has committed the crime of making a mistake on the internet, you can address it politely. And the vast majority of commenters did address it politely. I appreciate that. This person did not, but it doesn't mean, just because somebody's a jerk doesn't mean they're wrong. And that's why I take the time to address even the jerks. And he writes back, so ignorant, gotcha. That's, again, it's rude followed by rude. And that makes the lives of all YouTubers a little bit more difficult. And obviously, we're pretty thick-skinned here. We're not going to stop producing free educational content because people are rude. But a lot of people are not so thick-skinned. And when people act like this on the internet, I've talked to so many people who find out I'm on YouTube and they say, I did make a couple of YouTube videos, but people were jerks, so I just stopped. It just wasn't worth it to me. People with channels of more than 100,000 subscribers, they got that far and they decided to cave because people are kind of jerks. So please be polite. Everybody makes mistakes. Acknowledge that. And hopefully, if you are somebody who is creating content, you'll accept criticism and fix it as we do. That's the best that you can possibly do. Because you can't hold yourself to the standard of never making mistakes. Nobody does that. All journalists make mistakes, no matter how hard they try. Another comment. Tony, if it was 100% cheaper than the Canon, it would cost $0. The Canon camera is twice as expensive as the Pentax, so it's 100% more expensive. But when I read it, I flipped it backwards and said it was 100% cheaper. Obviously, everybody who saw this knew that I simply misspoke, and they knew the Pentax was not free. The chart on the screen showed it correctly. So you don't need to correct that kind of thing. Everybody understood it, okay? A lot of people felt like they had to point this out. People like to know stuff on the internet. As a professional person at knowing stuff on the internet, I understand the appeal of knowing stuff, but you don't have to nitpick little things that are inconsequential like that. Another comment that I got, comparing both the 15 to 30 and 24 to 70 price tag with Nikon and Canon versions of the lenses of the Tamron is okay, because what they're saying is, I compared the Pentax 24 to 70 and the Pentax 15 to 30 to the Tamron 24 to 70 and the Tamron 15 to 30 because they are the same lens. The rebranded in Pentax adds a little bit of Pentax magic. But this person says they disagree about comparing the Pentax 70 to 200 to the Tamron 70 to 200. The Pentax is 100% Pentax design, which has to be compared with the Canon and Nikon models when you come to a price comparison. Great review if it were not for that little stab in the back. And overall, I appreciate the comment, though. It's funny to me that he perceives my choice of how to compare it as a stab in the back. That's a little bit dramatic. I don't feel like it's quite physically putting a knife in your back. I will explain that I explained this personally to him and many other people, but the Pentax 70-200 did not compare well to the Canon or Nikon 70-200 in our testing. It was surprisingly less sharp at the edges than we would have expected it to be compared to the Canon. So it was much less sharp than the Nikon in our testing. And compared to the Canon, it had pretty severe focus breathing, which the Tamron and Nikon both have severe focus breathing. Canon's the only one that lacks it. So I didn't feel like comparing it to the Canon and Nikon based on price would have been a fair comparison, because you would have actually been getting better quality out of the Canon or Nikon lenses. With that said, the Tamron lens does have focus breathing, but it's actually sharper than either the Canon or the Nikon. So the Tamron lens is still, it's a great lens, and it's what I actually prefer on the Nikon platform. But I will say, this person is presuming that my video should have been comparing name brand to name brand, and that's not how I select what I'm going to compare. I tend to compare by value and functionality. And in that example in the video, I was trying to put together good value-oriented kits for people who wanted to go full frame for as cheap as possible, not for people who want to go full frame and want to use name brand lenses. I invite anybody else to do that. We can all make our own content, but that's what I thought was the fairest comparison. And the fact that you can get the current generation Tamron lenses or the name brand lenses for the Canon Nikon platforms, that is one of the benefits of having the bigger infrastructure of lenses, or those third-party lenses. But again, do the math for whatever you want. But now I would like to kind of go to a third party here to look at the sharpness information about the three Pentax lenses, just so I can support what I just said about our own findings, because we do our own original testing here, but then we also like to look to third parties to validate it, again, because people are human and sometimes we make mistakes. But if I have a finding and a third party has a finding, then that reduces the possibility that's a mistake. So I'm going to be citing graphs from sdp.io/plens. This is a French site that you'll find at the end of this shortcut. But the graphs are the only graphs I found that look at the sharpness information for the three, the holy trinity of Pentax zooms. This is their chart for the 15 to 30 millimeter lens. And if you read French, you'll see that the blue color up at top means the lens is really sharp. And at the bottom, it's where it's red, the warmer colors, it's not really good enough. So you can see throughout the 15 to 30 range, it's almost great. It's almost perfect throughout the entire range, even wide open. And that's been our findings too. We have the Tamron version of this lens in the Nikon mount, and it's stellar. It's so incredibly sharp that it's hard to even compare it to anything. It's a great lens. We use it all the time. The 24 to 70 Pentax, this is also consistent with our testing against the Nikon version of the 24 to 70. It's good. It's not stellar wide open at 70 millimeters. I will say this chart doesn't point out that it has severe focus breathing at 70 millimeters, which the Nikon lacks, but still, it's a very good lens. And if you're getting a K1 and you want to get really sharp results, you shouldn't think twice. Both those lenses are great. This is the Pentax designed 70-200. And this is also consistent with our findings, which is the sharpness, especially at the edges and corners, is not great. The center sharpness was good, but the edges and the corners were not that great. And that's not a deal breaker for a portrait lens, because most of the time, sharpness isn't all that critical. Not as critical as it is for landscapes, and the center sharpness tends to be more important in portraits, whereas landscapes, the corner sharpness is really, really important. So it's not a deal breaker. But I just want to point out it does have some real deficiencies compared to the higher quality, the optics that are in the Tamron built lenses. So just because it's Pentax branded doesn't mean that optically it's perfect. It's still going to be good enough for the vast majority of portrait work. Just wanted to support my own testing with some third-party findings. Here's another quote from a comment. Older glass is not always less sharp. Because this is something that I point out in the video, because there were a lot of old lenses for Pentax, Canon, and Nikon. All these systems have old film lenses. And because there aren't that many new lenses for the Pentax full frame format, a lot of people are going back to the film lenses. So this is what he's supporting. Older glass is not always less sharp. Some of the K-mount legacy glass is fantastic and easily out-resolves a 36 megapixel sensor. I do want to respond to this by pointing you to this entire video that I have, sdp.io/mp, where I talk about megapixels and I talk about the interaction between the lens, which is analog, and the sensor, which is digital. And the analog world, of course, has nice smooth curves in it, and sensors are actually made up of little square red, green, and blue boxes. So there's that transition there. And there's no such thing as a lens that out-resolves a sensor, really. You'd have to have something that was optically perfect. The end result, the amount of detail that you get, is always a combination of the quality of the lens, the number of megapixels, and then, removing anything that might lower the sharpness of the sensor, like anti-aliasing filters. Anyway, check that out if you care about this. Again, I'll reference this French website that you can find at this link here. To talk about some of the older film lenses that they have. So Pentax is known for having a lot of really good old film lenses, and I've tested a lot of film lenses because I love using old film cameras, and I have tried them out on my digital bodies, and I've gotten really poor results. What I've found, and I haven't tested obviously every single lens, and I haven't tested any Pentax film lenses for that matter, but I've tested a lot of film lenses on digital cameras, and they always seem to under-resolve. So this person did test some old film lenses in the Pentax world, and you can see just from the lack of dark blue colors on the 31, 43, and 77 millimeter primes that they're not as sharp as even the new Tamron built zooms. The 24 to 70 would cover that entire range, and it looks like the 24 to 70 would be much sharper. So it's not quite as fast at f2.8. Actually, once you shut those down to f2.8, it looks like it would be pretty similar. So anyway, these are okay, but they're not exceptionally sharp, especially by modern standards. The 100 millimeter lens looks like it is actually a really super sharp lens, though it's only at f2.8. I think it's a macro. Let's look at Pentax's older 28 to 70. And I bring this up because a lot of people said, if you're really on a budget with the Pentax, you should go back and get the 28 to 70. You can see it's not as sharp as the 24 to 70. So maybe it's not the best choice for people with a 36 megapixel camera. There are different audiences here, right? And if you're a Pentaxian and you have a collection of Pentax bodies and a collection of Pentax lenses and you want to shoot full frame, you have one camera to choose from. You have the K1. You should get that. You should use the lenses that you like and enjoy it. No, there's no question about that. But this is not the audience that I made a review for, because there's really no choice for you, right? It's kind of been made up, and if you're a Pentax fan, you're going to do that anyway. I made the video for people who are making a buying choice between, who might be considering Canon or Nikon, but maybe they should be considering the Pentax alternative, which would be otherwise easily overlooked. That's what I made the video for. So that's why I spent the bulk of the time comparing the platforms and giving people the information they need to really make an educated choice that they won't later regret. And as a result of that process and that audience, I need to go through every potential pitfall. And that's what I did. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. So yes, you can put the 28 to 70 on there. The reason I didn't include it, and the reason Pentax didn't include it in their official list is that it's not designed for something like a high-resolution 36 megapixel sensor. It will work. If you don't care that much about sharpness, it will be just fine. Sharpness isn't that important to photography. It's really not. It's just one of those things that's easy to compare. This is their comparison of another highly sighted lens, the 80 to 200 millimeter Pentax lens. Again, it's like an older lens, and it's not on Pentax's official list of lenses for the digital K1. And you can see lots of not blue colors here. This lens, in this person's testing, they tested it to not end up being that sharp. Anyway, I just want to surface this information. These older lenses, Pentax seems to have left them off the list of official digital lenses for the K1 for a reason. They probably just don't end up comparing that well. And somebody comments sarcastically, I can hear their cries of indignation as I type. Don't you know that Pentax film lenses are the best? And there is this perception out there, largely because nobody's ever done objective comparisons of them. I find that when people love whatever lens they have, assuming it feels good, assuming it works properly, they love it. And then they kind of leap to more objective conclusions like this lens is particularly sharp. But when I talk to these people, they've never done a side-by-side comparison. That's what we do. We attempt to be a little more objective about it because people are actually making recommendations. So if you find that a lens is sharp, then it's sharp enough. That's all that matters. You find it sharp, it's sharp enough for what you're doing. But when people are laying down money, when they're considering buying, they're going to buy one of two or three things, it's my job to help them make an educated decision. And if they care about sharpness, then I need to bring that up. They can then decide sharpness doesn't matter and make whatever buying choice, but I need to surface that information so people can make an educated choice. Here's another comment. The thing is, you can get the older Tamron 70-200 f2.8, new or used in K-mount, for about $600, or one of the recent Sigma 70-200s used. So, unfortunately, both Tamron and Sigma have stopped making full-frame lenses for the Pentax K-mount. They used to make full-frame lenses for the Pentax K-mount, and they stopped with the most recent generation of lenses. So there are Tamron and Sigma lenses, but their previous generation. Tamron and Sigma won't even loan these lenses out anymore because they're just like, this isn't our best work. They're older. This is a comparison of, from DxOMark, of the Tamron older generation on the left to the new one on the right. And you can see the older one, again, not as sharp. Again, if you don't care about sharpness, then go for it. But I want you to understand why I steered people towards the new one. Another quote. Tony begins by saying that Pentax lies when it shows a vast number of lenses in its ads, and that only 7 lenses are ideal for the K1. That is not true. There are older lenses, and especially the limited ones, that work wonderfully and are perfect for this first Pentax full-frame camera. So let's listen to that quote and then watch this clip of me actually talking about the lenses in the review. Yes, Pentax will show you this picture, but the official list from Pentax shows only 7 full-frame lenses optimized for digital. This unofficial Pentax forum list shows 15 full-frame lenses that should be compatible with the K1, but that's compared to hundreds of Canon and Nikon compatible lenses. All the other Pentax lenses are APS-C, which will reduce resolution to 16 megapixels. Just make sure you have the lenses you need before you buy into it. So you can see that this is not at all what I said. At no point did I say Pentax is lying. I was quite precise in the information that I provided. This comment here is not true, but what they're doing is creating a logical fallacy called a straw man. And if you want to make somebody look stupid, a straw man attack is a really good way to do it. This is an example that Wikipedia provides about the straw man attack. Person 1 asserts something, and then person 2 suggests that person 1 said something slightly different. They build up that straw man, and then they attack that straw man by attacking that misquote, basically. And that's what happened here. I never said that Pentax lied, nor did I ever say that the limited ones wouldn't work. Though we are, as we're doing more research into it now, obviously I'm finding that some of the older film lenses might not be as sharp as people might feel like they are. I also didn't say that only 7 lenses are ideal for the K1. What I said was I reached out to Pentax PR, and they said 7 lenses are ideal for the K1. So this is Pentax's word. I have not obviously tried to test every lens. I cannot assess how many lenses there are. So a lot of the statement is untrue, and it does make me look like I'm saying misleading things. And if you simply look at people's comments about the video instead of listening to what I say, you would think that I was being misleading. It's a straw man attack. Let's look at another straw man attack. And doesn't this imply that anyone who buys the holy trinity of Pentax lenses is dumb because he fails to see a fantasized lens shortness? This is from DP Review, which is kind of the home of straw man attacks. In fairness, I looked through the forum threads on this video. The vast majority of people are totally reasonable and supportive and kind. But there were a few people who kind of set these things up. Obviously, at no point in the video do I imply that people buying Pentax lenses are dumb. I don't feel that way at all. Okay. Nice review from you. Not sure I agree about not being able to use this camera for portraits. This is building up the straw man. Lots of photographers use slow medium format cameras without problem, and I think it depends on your style of shooting. And that second sentence is tearing down the straw man. Now let's listen to what I actually had to say about shooting portraits with the Pentax. For portraits, the K1 can get good portraits, especially if your style is kind of slow and posed. So as you can see, I said the commenter and I totally agree, except that he set up a straw man and then disagreed with it. But I totally think it depends on your style of shooting. And again, I need to surface information that a variety of different buyers can use to make a buying choice. You can take portraits with the Pentax. It's fine. Your review comes across as unnecessarily negative. I named the Pentax K1 as my favorite landscape camera of all time. I raved about the usefulness of the touchscreen, the Wi-Fi. I pointed out that none of the other cameras in this field have Wi-Fi or a GPS in it. I went on and on. I absolutely adore the camera. I don't know why anybody would think it was unnecessarily negative. If you think that's unnecessarily negative, you should perhaps watch our Nikon D5 review. Every single one of our reviews points out the strengths and weaknesses of every single given camera, because every camera has them. No camera is perfect. And I don't know, for this particular commenter, I don't know if I would have to have named the Pentax the best camera for every type of photography of all time for it not to be a negative review, but it was an overwhelmingly positive review. This camera has an amazing set of features. And then that same person says, you wonder why Pentaxians are so sensitive. Well, you just upped their sensitivity by another 10 points. I don't know, again, if me declaring the camera the best landscape camera of all time, but not the best camera for every type of photography, that's going to up your sensitivity. Then you need to relax a little bit. If you already own the camera, just go shoot with it and enjoy it. I make reviews for people who are making buying decisions. Some reviewers take the easy route. They make reviews to entertain people who already have the camera, because a lot of people who buy gear watch the reviews because they want to hear good things said about their camera and thus about their own buying choices. That's not me. I help people spending money. That's who I care about. And I would feel terribly guilty if I led somebody to buy a camera that was not the best camera for them. If somebody spent thousands of dollars, wanted to use the Pentax for sports, I would feel guilty. Not that it's a usable sports camera, just like it's a usable portraits camera, but if that's your focus, if that's your main priority, it's not what I would recommend. Another comment, Canon 70-200 is actually 230 millimeters. I get this one a lot because another YouTuber named Matt made a video where he specifically criticized one of my videos, and he measured Canon's 200 millimeter lens as being 230 millimeters. And I reached out to Matt, sincerely interested in getting to the bottom of this. That would be an interesting result if Canon was underrating their own lens and it actually outperformed their stated measurements. That regardless, it would still be better than the competition. And we spent like a month going back and forth until I finally identified a miscalculation in the formula that Matt was using. And I found an objective way to examine the length of all the lenses, and that by putting extension tubes on a lens, you can cancel out the effect of focus breathing, and that allows you to determine whether or not a lens is focus breathing. Anyway, I promise the Canon is 200 millimeters. Matt will not take down his video, even though I've proved it mathematically incorrect and I've proved it through experimentation that it's incorrect. The Canon is definitely 200 millimeters flat, and the other cameras do focus breathe. My favorite comment, bring back Kai. I know there's like 7 of you who are going to get this joke, but that's it. Okay. I have some books and stuff, Lightroom, Photoshop, camera gear, photographic techniques. You can check it out at stp.io/store, or just search for my name, Tony Northrup, at Amazon. Thank you. If you have any questions, write a polite comment. Bye.